We are live. Welcome to college football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We sit in the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kirk Gowdy Avenue. Welcome in. Do not be afraid. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, if you need a little bit of extra content, college football content to get you through the days, to get you through the nights, subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash that like button. Share the video with your family and friends, your significant other. Share it with your psychiatrist, with your priest, your cat and your dog. Welcome in. Big stack show on a Wednesday afternoon. You got to keep your head on a swivel. If you're part of the PATC community, we can be going live at any time. We've done double headers. We came close to doing a triple header one day. Lots of stuff going on. Lots of Cloak and Dagger. Lots of Cloak and Dagger going on behind the scenes of college football. Before we get into the monologue, before we get to your comments, before we get to your fantastic phone calls, I need to say thank you to our sponsor, Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters. Welcome to the Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters. We invite you to discover the Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters difference. Clean hot air roasted coffee produces a smoother, a richer, and a healthier coffee that is less bitter and less acidic. Our hot air roasted coffee uses convection heat to loft the beans for a very even heat transfer. The clean, bright taste that people rave about is achieved by roasting the bean quickly and evenly while suspended on a bed of hot air. From craft to cup, hand pick coffee beans. There is a link provided in the description box. Give it a try. The best coffee, smoothest coffee I've ever had, the wife's ever had, the Little General. And if you do want to try this incredible coffee, and if you do want to support our channel, put PATC in the comment section at Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters. We are so thankful to have them as a sponsor. And if you're going to go get that coffee, And we're going to be talking about Cloak and Dagger. You know the game that's played in the chat room. A lot of you should know this by now. Peek around the corner, official game rules. Have fun and drink responsibly. We're going to be saying the word Cloak and Dagger quite a bit today in this episode. And if you want to go purchase your own Cloak and Dagger mug, peek around the corner, go to our merchandise store. That's in a link provided in the description box. We've got a stack show. We had to do this live show today. This afternoon, we could not wait any longer. We're going to get into the Matt Hayes article at the Saturday Tradition about what Big Ten officials have told Saturday Tradition. We have not talked to Big Ten officials here, peek around the corner, but you know that we have been talking to people in the Money Perch and others. And I got to say, the Big Ten's issue with travel is being underplayed right now. Underplayed right now. When college football reporters are generally talking about this issue, I'm telling you, Matt Hayes says, or the officials told Matt Hayes, multiple officials, USC and UCLA can't be left on a geographic island. We have been telling you that they can't be left alone on an island. However you want to say it, it cannot hold. It cannot hold. There is so much steam we can't even talk about to protect other people, our sources, other people's sources. There is so much steam. We're not afraid to say it. There is so much steam. And you know that Washington, Oregon, unless they've been told absolutely no way are you joining the Big Ten by the 2024 season, this has to play in their decision making and whether they sign on the dotted line for the new Pac-12 media deal whenever we get to see that. It's got to be in play because there is so much steam. We're going to go through that article. And then we're going to go through an article, the Tomahawk Nation, Florida State, Michael Alford, the athletic director, speaks once again. He says, I need to protect Florida State. We're going to go through that article. You know, by the end of spring, peek around the corner owes you all our story that we had for December 26th, the most ripe story that we can get when it comes to Florida State and potentially other schools, potentially challenging the grant of rights in the courts. We owe you that story. By the end of spring, we're going to give you all that we know. We held on. December 26th, we stood down from what we knew. We know more than we did then. Hopefully, we'll know more than we do now when we finally tell you what we believe, what we've been told that is going on behind the curtains, the cloak and the dagger. My goodness, Michael Alford's just letting everybody know change has to come, and we'll get into that or when we can. So we got a stack show. We have a stack show. Sean says geography is not just about distance. It's also about time zones. Yes. We've got Cloak and Dagger. Get those mugs out. Drink your tea. Drink your Diet Coke. All right, it's the middle of the afternoon. You probably shouldn't be hitting that tequila, but drink whatever anytime I say Cloak and Dagger because it's coming on today's show. Okay. All right, let's not waste any more time. I know you guys are done. We got to get to these stories because they're serious. They are serious. They are true stories. How it develops, how it goes, we can't tell you here at Peek Around the Corner. And nobody else can. But there is real steam. Real steam. Okay. Saturday Tradition. Now, I provided a link to the story in the description box. You can read the whole article. We're just going through the part of what has to do with this show today in regards to not leaving USC and UCLA on a geographic island. Okay, the Big Ten. Jim Harbaugh posed to finally hit the elite level in recruiting at Michigan. Again, we're not going to be talking about that in this show. The slog schedule process, number 4 in this article. The further Big Ten officials delve into a new schedule format, the more exposed is the reality of USC and UCLA alone on the West Coast. Officials continue to work through format proposals. 3 permanent opponents and 6 rotating is still the likely choice. Even though it could all be scrapped once a new commissioner is hired and if expansion is revisited. In other words, if they come up with a decision here in May and put it out there, it could be revisited once a new commissioner is hired. Multiple Big Ten officials expressed concern about travel logistics with USC and UCLA. And earlier this month, in the month of March, those Big Ten officials told Saturday Tradition that athletic scheduling, travel, and academic stress for all student athletes at all member institutions, not just football players, must be addressed, and that USC and UCLA can't be left on a geographic island. And you know, if you've been watching our program since June 30th, well, we didn't start a Peek Around the Corner since August 10th, but for those who've been following us at Peek Around at Flag Empire and Twitter, when we broke the news, USC called the Big Ten on March 31st, you know that whole story. If you don't, go to episode 22 of our channel or go to our pin tweet at Flag Empire and you can read the Los Angeles Times report on us article by Brad McCullough. Look, this has been known. Big Ten, many people in the Big Ten this wasn't supposed to go just USC and UCLA. That wasn't the goal. That wasn't the mission. They just have 2 teams on the Pacific Coast. But those were the first 2 teams that they had to lock in. Those were the first 2 institutions that they wanted on board. Those were the first 2 institutions that Fox Sports would help pay for. They wanted to lock up the city of Los Angeles. NBC, CBS, you know about the whole bidding war for the Big Ten media rights. It all came. The great deal that they got in exposure and money, 16 institutions, USC and UCLA came in with so much leverage that both those institutions became full-time invested members of the Big Ten Conference on day 1 when they come officially into the Big Ten Conference on August 1st, 2024, when the grant of rights, Pac-12 current grant of rights ends. Okay? But on day 1, on June 30th, and we talked about this on episode 1 all the way up to episode 177, it was never the plan to have USC and UCLA just be only those 2 schools in an enlarged Big Ten, in an expanded Big Ten. Now, we've gone through it. There was going to be a decision-making process from the Big Ten. There was a decision window between August 15th and October 15th. A go or no-go for launch for further expansion. At this time, in October, Big Ten decided no further expansion at this time. We reported at Peek Around the Corner. The door's been closed. About a month ago, Pete Thamel says the Big Ten expansion door is cracked open. We at Peek Around the Corner 2 weeks later says, yeah, it is cracked open. I mean, there is a growing acknowledgement that this composition of the Big Ten, it's hard to defend. We've been talking about this at Peek Around. In fact, we told you all that we were going to be very tough on the Big Ten. Day in, day out, week in, week out, because of this situation. Look, you're the Big Ten, right? You're the Big Ten. You hold yourselves at a very high level. You preach to other conferences, right? You talk about the mental, the stress about the student athletes, about how they need to be treated better. You hold yourself up pretty high, and then you get UCLA, USC on an island, and right now you're not expanding anymore, not to take any more Pacific Coast schools. It has people are already negative recruiting against you. We heard San Diego State's athletic director, the president, talk about how San Diego, the head coach, the basketball coach, Brian Dutcher, saying that they use this in their recruiting now. USC, UCLA, if you want to be a student athlete that goes all over the country, why don't you stay regional with us? But that's just the start. These other conferences are going to pound on you, pound on you, pound on you. And it hasn't even begun yet. UCLA, USC are not part of the Big Ten until 2024. Just wait when that happens. And internally, the Big Ten, we told you a peek around the corner. Yes, let me make this clear. You know what? Let me get through this article. Just got one more thing here, and then I'm going to make something very, very clear for everybody. The Big Ten and SEC both, back to the article, the Big Ten and SEC both will likely announce in May new schedule formats for the 16-team leagues in 2024. The Big Ten schedule could be reworked and allow more flexibility for USC and UCLA should the conference add 2, Oregon and Washington, or more teams, Stanford and California, in expansion. Okay, let me make something so very clear. Yes, there are people in the Big Ten who do not want to expand further right now. Down the road, yes. Right now, no. In fact, those same particular people who are against it are probably not much against Oregon and Washington. They just want to slow down, bring Oregon and Washington on board, make sure the landscape doesn't change dramatically, i.e. Florida State, i.e. North Carolina, i.e. Miami of Florida, i.e. Virginia. All that is understood. There are people that want to hold back. They do not want to expand. Plus, you've also got the economic situation where we're in a media recession. In a media market recession. Plus, has a streamer, has Amazon, have they put down enough money for potential Big Ten expansion? All those issues. There are people that are against Big Ten expansion right now. But all of them. It's all of them in the Big Ten. I can't express this enough. All of them. Okay, 99.99% of them do not want UCLA and USC on an island. For all the reasons that are reality and all the reasons that are just perception. The perception is already killing them. The reality hasn't even started yet. I hope you all understand this. At some point, look, Matt Hayes is not the only one who's picking up on this. I'm not going to mention names, but the door, it's cracked open. It doesn't mean it's going to swing open. There's so many hurdles for there to be further Big Ten expansion before 2024. So many hurdles. The media market recession that we're in is also what hindered the ability for the Big Ten to expand. Not just hindering the Pac-12 ability to sign a decent deal with decent exposure, it would also hinder the Big Ten. They also do not have a commissioner. They also have George Kliavkoff trying to get 10 presidents on board. Oregon and Washington, I'm saying this, there is no way that they're sitting there. Kase and Oregon, there's no way they're sitting there today. What are we on? March 29th. And there's no way that they're sitting there right now and not putting Big Ten in part of their equation on what they should do next. Yes, they're working on a Pac-12 deal. Yes, they're looking at Pac-10 expansion. Yes, they're possibly looking at a very, very heavy streaming component in their new Pac-12 media deal. Will that work for us? But there's also the lingering question of the Big Ten. And I got to tell you, and I've said this before, I've said this a couple times when we lost our stream. I don't know if someone's hacking into our YouTube channel, Cloak and Dagger, Cloak and Dagger. I'm just joking around there. But Fox Sports, if they had their druthers, they wouldn't have no problem with an expansion of Oregon, Washington. But there's so much more at play for that to happen. But the major media company that's in partnership with the Big Ten, they're not against it. There are other things that are hindering that possibility. But those boulders, those hurdles could be pushed away. And the number one force that's against status quo, and I'm talking about status quo, 16 universities in the Big Ten. The biggest force against status quo is the traveling issues. And I know, I get it. Seattle's still long ways away from Los Angeles. I get it. Washington and Oregon are still a long ways from USC, UCLA. But it gives you so many more options to schedule. A Purdue baseball team can clear off 3 West Coast teams in one trip before they come back home. This one example. Many more examples where you can, for the non-revenue sports, for the Olympic sports, that can help so much. Plus football, you can have we've talked about this, 18 schools, 10 conference games, 3 permanent rivals. You clean all that up. We put down examples. I don't have that ready to show you for today, but we've showed it in other shows. It's the reality. Multiple Big Ten officials told Matt Hayes, I'm telling you, multiple Big Ten officials, multiple people in the money perch, multiple sources telling multiple people all over the place that the traveling issue has only grown for the Big Ten internally, and it hasn't even started yet. The reality hasn't hit yet, but the perception, only the perception, is already killing them. Agree, disagree, put in the comments section below the video, but I'm telling you here, peek around the corner. You can believe me or not, there is so much steam. I'm going to tell you, there are things we can't even say here at Peek Around the Corner. There is so much steam, a lot of hurdles to have to overcome for there to be an Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten by 2024. But it's not unanimous either way. But what is unanimous right now, today, they got troubles on their hands in the Big Ten. And at Peek Around the Corner, we are the rebel outpost of all YouTube channels, right? College football, we're going to say it like it is. We've said it like it is in the Pac-12. We say it like it is in the Big 12. We say it like it is in the Big 10, so forth and so on. ACC, which we're going to get to next in this live show. Big 10, you got a huge, huge issue on your hands. And reality hasn't even hit yet. And yet it's a huge issue on your hands inside the conference. Great. Is there a fracture in the conference in regards to further expansion at this time? The answer is absolutely 100% yes. Okay? Take that however you want to take it. Cloak and Dagger, Cloak and Dagger, Cloak and Dagger. Now, we're not even halfway through our monologue. We got to go to the Florida State story. Florida State athletic director spoke up again. And that's Cloak and Dagger. He's putting it out there. He's putting it out there for so many different reasons. And we're going to get to some of them in this live show. December 26th, for those who are new to our channel, and there's so many people who are new to our channel every day, and I thank you so much. For those, if this is your first live show, make sure you subscribe to our live show. Make sure you subscribe to our channel because we can pop up at any time. December 26th, we had a story. We were asked to stand down. We stood down and had to do with the Florida State money perch. You could go to a YouTube channel back to December 26th, and the title is still there. We advertised this show, but an hour before we went on live, we stood down. We had reasons, and we wouldn't take it back. We made the right decision. Then a couple months later, Florida State starts talking, right? How this reality cannot hold, just like what we did with the Big Ten a few minutes ago. This reality of Florida State cannot hold without them doing some drastic measure. You say, Greg, you've always talked about the strength of the grant of rights. You've talked about that for years at Flug Empire and now at Peek Around the Corner. And you're absolutely correct. It would be too risky to challenge the grant of rights in the court of law, in the courts. It would be too risky, except for the fact that now it's become too risky not to challenge the grant of rights. And again, there's so much more to the story that we haven't peeled the onion away for you all to see, but we're getting there. We're getting closer every day, every week, and I promise you, before the end of spring, Peek Around the Corner is going to lay it all out. Okay, now, let's get to the Florida State Athletic. As you can see, I'm sort of pumped. I'm pumped up today. There is so much Cloak and Dagger. And we don't have a crystal ball. My ball cracked 50 years ago. Okay, but we're going to give you the best information we have to give you the best peek around the corner when it comes to college football. That is what we do here. Okay. SB Nation, Tomahawk Nation. Written by Brian Pellerin and John Marchant. I need to protect Florida State. Michael Alford talks AC revenue distribution, NIL, Ireland matchup, and more. Again, we're not going to go through the whole article. Please read the whole article. We provide a link in the description box below the video. Nearly 500 days into his tenure at the helm of Florida State Athletics, Michael Alford has made some major strides for his department. The biggest of those is coming from the football program. In that short time frame, the team has gone from cellar dwellers to a likely preseason top 10 team with a commitment to the transfer portal and NIL. Off the field, they've broken ground in a new football-only facility after a strong fundraising effort and a scheduled marquee international game in Ireland, something he says has been months in the making. I have a great relationship with John Anthony, who is one of the founders of the game, Alford told the Seminole Rap. He approached me and he said, hey, would you ever consider it? And I said, of course, but there's got to be certain parameters in place. I'm not going to give up a home game. Alford says the interaction led to the game organizers finding the team on the Noles away schedule that would be willing to make the trip overseas. The result, an additional primetime game in 2024 against Georgia Tech. As for the game stateside, the attitude of not giving up a home games is a big focus. So that could mean non-conference contests in Tallahassee instead of a neutral site. We owe that to this community to continue our fan base coming back so we can showcase everything academically and culturally that's going on at the university, Alford added. I'm never going to say never, but my priority is to have games here at Doak. Okay, those games represent $100 million annually to Tallahassee and Leon County, according to the athletic director. Each game represents a massive boost to the local economy. One of his other focuses is his department finances as well. After all, it's not free to build a new football facility or to pay lucrative extensions to Norvell and other key members of the football staff, or recruit Link Jarrett away from Notre Dame, or, well, you get the point. That funding is what remains at the forefront in Alford's mind as he looks at Florida State's commitment to ACC. In this interview, the Seminole Rap crew asked Alford where he believes FSU's relationship with the conference stands 1 month after his presentation to the school's board of trustees. In that presentation, he painted the picture of the growing gap in revenue between them, the SEC, and the Big Ten. Does he think a redistribution plan is on the table with the conference? Now let's see if he answers that question. Does he think a redistribution plan is on the table with the conference? This is Mike Alford. We understand, especially at Florida State and a couple of other institutions, named Clemson, named North Carolina, and I think there's probably at least Miami, Florida in there, and a couple of other institutions. Really understand the commitment of that gap that's coming. It's a freight train that's barreling down the tracks. I'm very involved and looking at solutions. He's looking at solutions. He's being public with it. He's doing it in private. Okay? Looking at solutions, because I can't sit here and for 5 years it'd be $30 million behind every year. It's not a 1 year thing, and that makes a big difference, especially when you start compounding that year after year after year, and it's going to be more than $30 million, ladies and gentlemen, especially when the Big Ten gets to renew their contract in 2030 and Florida State is sitting there in that same tier 1 contract from 2030 to 2036. It's going to be more than $30 million a year, ladies and gentlemen. The reality's starting to hit. Those creative solutions include rewarding schools for being leaders on and off the field. And here's the money shot, PATC money shot in this article. Mike Alford. We're working with the conference on a revenue concept that rewards success not only on the field, but I'm also in there fighting for on TV as well. Now, what do you think that means? Put your comments down in the comment section. Give us a phone call later on in this live show. What does that mean? We're working with the conference on revenue concept that rewards success. We all understand that. Not only on the field, but I'm also in there fighting for on TV as well. In other words, are you going to get $1 million more here and there, $500,000 here and there, $1.5 million more here and there if your TV ratings hit 3.0, 3.5 million views? So you're getting a little bit more in the TV ratings as well? Is that what that means? Holy smokes. This, of all the fascinating stories that we are covering at Pick Around the Corner, and there is so many. There is so many. And if you see in our last few episodes, we're talking about the top 6 running backs coming in this for the 2023 season. We had our Heisman watch, way too early Heisman watch. We just today broke down Athlon's returning starters for the Big Ten. We're going to do that for the SEC and the rest of the conference next. There is so many big stories. ACC's unequal revenue sharing, that's right up there with the Pac-12 media negotiation saga. Now Alford's bringing in the fact that the TV portion as well, that they're going to be unequal revenue sharing potentially based upon what? Views of their games? You think all those schools are going to agree with it? We'll get to it at the end of this article. We're almost there. Mike Alford, he says this. He won't say if he's been contacted by other conferences. But he did say, without the ACC making changes, that gap will put a large burden on the fundraising arms of FSU. He won't say if he's been contacted by other conferences. But we know, look, the number one rule of realignment is realignment never sleeps. Number 2 rule of realignment is the school calls the conference first. He's been in contact, no doubt about it, with Florida State. Florida State's been in contact with the Big Ten and the SEC. We all can come to agreement with that. 100%. But of course, he's not going to answer that question. There may be something in the ACC bylaws that makes Alford not to be able to answer that question precisely. Back to the article. Alford believes falling behind in revenue could have Florida State behind the eight ball and competing for coaches, upgrading facilities, and essentially everything else the Power 2 conference would have to offer. Something else he thinks will force that gap to show up is the university's reputation and dedication to competing in every sport. There's way more to the article. Go to the link and read the whole thing. But there it is, reputation and trying to compete in every sport and every level. It's why USC called the Big Ten. It's why we broke that in March 31st, 2022. And for the 3 months afterwards, we explained all the reasons why USC did what they did. It's all the reasons why Florida State is pressing. They're trying to get this unequal revenue sharing plan going in the ACC. And if the ACC does not comply, if the schools do not agree, and I don't know how they can, I'll get to that in a second, then Florida State is going to use all of that in a possible challenge for the grant of rights. Now, Greg, why are you so pessimistic that the ACC can come up with an unequal revenue sharing plan? Okay, maybe they will. Maybe they'll come up with a plan, but it's not going to work. That's the problem. It's not going to work. Those ACC schools that don't ever have a chance to get into the SEC, the Big Ten, they're not going to give up millions and millions of dollars. Remember, these schools, they have already budgeted their athletic department years out to pay debt payments for facility, for all these things. They've already projected this stuff out. They cannot take $1 million loss here and $1 million loss here. Remember, these schools in the ACC, Boston College, Syracuse, Pittsburgh, on and on and on, all those schools basically know how much they're going to get every single year into 2036. They're getting a boost in revenue when it comes to the ACC network. That's very good. Very good news for those schools. But they basically know their projections, right? And so they have projected their expenses as well. And now you're going to start taking $1 million away from them. Are they going to abide by it? You know what they're going to do? They're going to put other variables into the mix. This huge metrics, this huge ACC unequal revenue plan is going to have this huge filled up, many different metrics on how they're going to weigh all this stuff. And you know what's going to happen? It's going to flatline anybody's ability to make actually more revenue based upon success and or TV ratings. It's not going to work. And I'm not even sure they can even pass a plan. Maybe they do, but it's not going to work. It's not going to decrease the gap that Florida State has with the SEC and the Big Ten in the years ahead. But Mike Alford, man, he's going in public once again, and there's a reason for that, and I think most of you can guess the reason for it. Florida State, they're not just saying this to play. They're not just saying this to throw some elbows. They're saying this because they're going to gear up for a potential challenge to the ACC grant of rights. We here at Peek Around the Corner do not believe in dissolution, where there's 8 votes that dissolve the conference, that dissolves the gore. We don't believe in a payout. We believe the only way that Florida State could potentially get out of the ACC grant of rights, the ACC owns Florida State's individual media rights, is to challenge it and win it in court. Or if there's enough people challenge it, maybe a settlement comes, but it goes to the courts. Big risky move, right? We'll see. We'll break it down more before the end of the spring. At Peek Around the Corner, we're going to give you the fully developed story. At that point, we'll give you all we know. Before the end of the spring, we make that promise to you. We stood down on the story December 26th. We're not going to keep standing down on the story. We'll tell you before the end of spring. What's the last day of spring? June 20th? Somewhere around there? Before the end of spring, We'll give you everything we know. Okay. I'm going to go to your comments, then your phone calls. You can talk about anything college football. Earlier in today's episodes, we talked about athlons, breakdown, and returning starters for the Big Ten. We've been talking about a lot of different things here, peek around the corner, everything to do with college football. So you can call. When you call, you can talk about anything you want in college football. Okay, here we go. Lots of Cloak and Dagger. Lots of Sky Yuma, Ryan Matson, absolutely. Sky Yuma, how do you do, Greg? Good to see you. Good to see you, Lee. Appreciate it. Grateful Trojan, interesting title. It's been true since June 30th. June 30th. People in the Big Ten, they recognize the fact that can't just have USC and UCLA home on an island. When do they make the change? We'll see. But we know that isn't going to hold. It isn't going to hold. Okay. James Park, nice to see you in the house. Washington, Oregon administration, the PAC media deal is probably the last thing on their minds. Grateful Trojan, if the concern is an island, the Bay Area or Arizona schools is the answer, not PNW. I am not sure why I keep getting this thing here. Hold on. Provo Cougar fans. So add Colorado and Utah and make it a long par 5 with Nebraska. Gopher Tony, Notre Dame, Clemson, FSU are the best available to the Big Ten or the SEC. Yank 1, Florida State is a traditional rival in Notre Dame and could get a full share if they can bring the Irish with them again. They would have to somehow get out of the ACC grant of rights. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. Florida State TV ratings are way better than UCLA. Immaculate, I don't think FSU is looking to leave right now. They got some legal issues to work out. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's get to your phone calls. I'll keep monitoring the comments. I'm going to get to your phone calls right now. The number is 763-260-1333, 763-260-1333. The lines are open right now. Right now they're open. Give us a call. Talk about anything in college football. Sean Sang says, Florida State doesn't bring a huge market. Are you crazy? Pretty big market in Florida State. Pretty big brand. I think SEC and the Big Ten would both be all over them. Immaculate. UVA would be an academics and research edition. Big Ten minds would believe that the Big Ten money will allow Virginia to compete better in football. Sean says, great for Trojan. That's not true. There are many people saying Oregon and Washington are awash. They don't add or subtract from Big Ten value. Sean Eaton, Oregon's brand is being overlooked by a lot of people. Not by a peek around the corner. Nope. not by peek around the corner, and they're not being overlooked by Fox Sports, or they are a brand multiplier. Yes, they're not a huge research universities. Yes, that's a knock against them and getting into the Big Ten Conference. But it's way more nuanced. But yeah, Oregon's brand is much bigger than most people realize. That's the one thing I've learned through all of this, is Oregon's brand is massive, and a lot of people do not understand that. Lance Balkus, why are so many Minnesota players transferring? It's a huge issue, Lance. A lot of Gopher fans would like to believe that because of the younger players are pushing them out. It's different for every player. We had a linebacker leave who wanted to play close to home. The defensive tackle, Trill Carter, him leaving, that's going to hurt. He's been threatening to leave for a couple of years, so I'm not sure if he just kind of... It's a great question. We've got holes to fill, Lance. We're in trouble. We got to go back into that. Got to go back in that transfer portal. We need a cornerback. We need a linebacker. We only got like 82 scholarships on the scholarship chart. We got 82 scholarship players, I believe. Could be 83, but I think it's 82. We got some work to do. Gophers got some work to do. And because all those issues, Lance, peek around the corner, unfortunately has the Gophers going 5-7. And it hurts me to say that. Jason says Oregon's brand is flashy, a recent thing, but no substance. Okay. But for now and for the last so many years, they've had a lot of viewership on their content. I don't know, maybe it's the flashy uniforms. Maybe it's all the money they put into the athletic programs. Maybe because they've been so successful. But there are a lot of Oregon Duck fans all across the mountain states and into the western part of Minnesota. A lot of Oregon fans. They remind me of the Nebraska fans, except for they're younger, they're newer. But there's Oregon fans all over that West Mountain West states. Same with Nebraska Cornhusker fans. Oregon is a brand multiplier. Keela, I'm sorry to mispronounce your name, Kihalini Elf. Florida State would be the only Big Ten member not to have a wrestling team. That's huge in the Big Ten Conference. So you aren't AAU, you're not a flagship, you don't have wrestling, but you think you'll get a full share? Well, again, Florida State's not... If Florida State ever enters the Big Ten, it's not going to be next year, this year, next year, the year after, the year after. We're talking a few years down the road. Can Florida State, if they pull the trigger and they challenge the grant of rights, it's going to take a while for them to... If they win that case, it's going to take a while for that case to play out. But again, because if they go to the courts, it's going to take a long time to play out. That means they're not going to wait years to actually do that. If they're going to do it, it's going to be soon, possibly in 2024, early 2024. That's part of the story. They're not going to wait until 2028 to pull the trigger to challenge the grant of rights. If they're ever going to do it, it's going to be soon. Why do you think we're getting all these public statements from officials of Florida State? Because they're setting the table. If they have to do it, if they pull the trigger, they have said everything in public. They have said everything in private. No one can say that you didn't warn us. No one can tell Florida State that you didn't tell us that you were unhappy with the structure of the ACC. Bruce Harris, why is a court challenge to the Gore risky? A lot of people would tell you, Bruce, that first of all, Florida State would have to spend lots and lots of money on lawyers year after year after year, and that's going to be quite expensive. With the outcome, maybe you're definitely not favored to win that outcome, right? So it's risky in that. Plus, possibly, maybe people argue that the ACC can come back for damages. You would have to pay their lawyers if they lost. Lots of things going on with the risk. But again, we've said here at Peek Around the Corner, because we've had people tell us the risk not to do it, to not challenge the grant of rights, especially if you believe you have cause, the risk not to do it is huge as well. So you gotta balance that. How they're going to challenge the grant of rights, we'll get to that later this spring. They have a few options. They believe they have a few options. That's Florida State's perception. Once again, one thing that we can make clear for you all right now, today, March 29th, just like we did on December 26th, is that Florida State, North Carolina, Miami of Florida, whoever you want to throw in there, these schools, if they're going to pull the trigger and challenge the ACC grant of rights, if they do it, they will do it alone, from each other, separate from each other. They're not going to do it together. That's the one thing we can tell you. And another thing, like we've been saying this since December 26th, nobody in the chat room, not myself or anybody that I know has actually seen, or anybody that I've actually talked to, have seen the true extended ACC grant of rights. The one that was signed by all the university presidents and Notre Dame that extended it from 2027 to 2036. None of us have seen that grant of rights. The ones you see out in public, they see the university signatures. We have not seen the whole grant of rights. That is locked away in a vault. Only decision makers at ACC, some lawyers, they have seen it. They can't take a picture of it. They can't take a copy of it. They can't take it out of that room that they look at it. It's there. And there's varying degrees. There's disagreement on how strong and valid and substantive that grant of rights is. We can tell you that as well. Something going on with the comment section here. Sean's saying Florida State doesn't want to be left behind. Some feel there's nothing to lose. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Mark, nice to see you again, my friend. Thank you for the super chat. Mr. West Virginia is in the house. Greatest Cloak and Dagger moment. ESPN blows up the Big East when they reject contract. Number 2, Alford talks Florida State board into grant of rights. 3, Sankey goes behind Texas A&M's back, a team in its own conference to talk to Texas. Wow, we'll get back to that.
Call from
to Mazda.
Mazda, the floor is yours. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Greg. There was this guy, Jim Williams from Forbes.
Yes.
Who was making the rounds last week, and he tweeted out early this morning that as of last month, from what he was told, it was unlikely that the Big Ten would expand. So your typical anti-Greg Flugard contingent on Twitter were retweeting that tweet.
Yeah.
And then of course there was a second part, which he explained he was only talking about 2 members of the Big Ten, not the entirety of the conference.
Yeah.
So the door is cracked open.
Yeah.
It's just not wide open.
Yeah. Look, and I'll give you time on your phone call, okay? I'm just gonna look.
Go ahead, Greg.
Again, Jim Williams, a reporter, I've had the pleasure of talking with them. Good good guy. Yeah, there's more than 2 Big Ten people who are saying Big Ten isn't going to expand at this time. They don't want to expand at this time. Absolutely correct. Now, of course, there's nuance to that, right? And Jim would say it. But people, I don't know. They've got to, they go on Twitter, they see that statement, then they got to call everybody liars, right? You've seen that, right?
Yes.
Liar, you're lying. And I'm just sitting there going, my goodness, these people are childish. Holy smokes. Jim's not lying. Dennis Dodd is not lying. None of these people are lying. Yes, there are people out. Yes, we in our monologue, there are people who do not want to expand. They have a lot of good reasons. There's a lot of big hurdles to overcome, even if everyone did want to expand. And we're telling you, there's people in the Big Ten that are saying this cannot stand. The way we have this conference set up, it wasn't supposed to stay this way. Just 16 schools. It can't stay this way. Perception is already killing us. Reality hasn't even set in because it hasn't started yet. We cannot be the conference that morally tells all these other conferences how to treat their student athletes when we got 2 schools thousands of miles away on an island. It's not going to work. 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 So I'm a Big Ten, I'm a Gopher, right? I'm telling you, it ain't going to work. And there is a growing acknowledgement of that. Is it going to be enough to make where Oregon and Washington joins the Big Ten before 2024? I don't know, but we're going to follow that story, peek around the corner. If you say, Greg, I think Big Ten isn't going to expand before 2024 because of all the reasons that we know, I'm going to say you might be right. And if you say, Greg, of course they're going to expand. You're an idiot for thinking, well, I'm going to say, okay, maybe you're right. But what I'm not going to call you, Master, is a liar. Right? Right?
Yes.
I just think I wish that whole thing never started. I'm not sure what happened with college football Twitter. I've never seen that before. But there's a whole clan of bunch of people going around calling people liars if you don't agree with them or if you report something that they don't want to hear. It's childish, it's stupid, and the biggest thing about it is, and then I'll be quiet and let you have the floor again. I apologize. The worst thing about it is it stops discussion. It's like they don't want people to talk about certain things. So they call you a liar to make you stop talking about it. That I will not tolerate here at Peek Around the Corner. If you tell me that I'm crazy because the Gophers I got them predicted going 5-7, and you think they should be going 2-10, that's great. You and I are going to talk about it. But don't say, Greg, you're saying the Gophers are 5-7 because you're part of a plot to whatever, whatever stupid thing that people are saying out there. No, we're going to disagree here at Peek Around the Corner. We're going to do it freely, happily. We're going to have fun with the game we love, college football. Now the floor is yours.
Thanks, Greg. It's just kind of disappointing seeing some well-respected journalists in the field who are retweeting a certain smiley face account without, any kind of corroboration from real sources. It's
embarrassing. It's embarrassing for those people who are doing it. And like you say, well-respected people. I think it's one of those moments in college football Twitter that has changed forever. And I've gone through the history of that smiley face. And some of those people, some of those people know the history of them, but they still do it because they just want people to agree with them. They don't want people to disagree with them. I want people to disagree with me. If everyone agreed with me, I'm going to shut this YouTube channel down in a heartbeat. That would be the boringest, dumbest thing ever. So please disagree with me.
Yes.
Continue.
So let me put my tinfoil hat on for a second.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's say that smiley face account is a certain USC grad's alt account.
No, I know that. that smiley face account has stalked me for years. In fact, he's part of the Los Angeles Times article that was in Los Angeles Times. If you go to the pinned tweet on my Twitter account, that smiley face guy went after me hard for months when we announced that USC called the Big Ten on March 31st, and we did a 3-month story on it. We documented everything on it. We gave it to media companies. A couple of them ran with it. And then when it happened on June 30th, that smiley face account who had on his pin tweet, Pflugar's lying, USC didn't call the Big Ten in 2022. When people called them on it, or her, I think it's a her, whatever, the smiley face account said, oh, wait, well, USC going to the Big Ten is not really a part of Big Ten expansion. It's a part of a Super League breakup that's happened in 2024. The guy or the lady is full of crap. He also, or she also went out since that happened, got really angry with me because we broke a story for months. That person, smiley face person, also went out and told stories on other websites saying that I was fired from Sunvale, the company that I used to work for. Not true. Spread a whole bunch of lies. None of them true. So the person tried to dox me through, and those reputable people on Twitter who are retweeting his stuff, they know that story. But yet they continue to do it. Why? Only because the smiley face guy is being used as a patsy for them, and they agree with them. That's how insidious this whole thing is. They know that person. And you know what? And if you're a smiley face guy or any other, you can go on Twitter. You can be on message boards. You can hide your true person, right? You don't have to give your name out. But then when you go and attack people, when you lie about people, and you hide behind a smiley face, what does that say about you? I mean, really, honestly. Everything we say here at Peek Around the Corner, every interaction between me and you, sir, we put our name on it. Greg Pflugar. We don't hide from it. That's our name. Greg, that's my name. Greg Pflugar. Smiley face guy. You know, and all the people who talk with them daily. I mean, I don't pay attention to it. People send me stuff. People laugh at it. I mean, there are people literally, I better not go there. Right, serious people are laughing at these people who are accusing everybody of lying. Anyways, go ahead.
All right, Greg, I'll let you go.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Great call. So Mark, greatest Cloak and Dagger moments? Absolutely. All of them I can agree with. Sankey not letting anybody know that they're talking to Texas. Gets them into the back window. Doesn't let Texas A&M know. That's a great Cloak and Dagger. Thanks for bringing that up, Mark. Swofford, he had to do that heavy push at the end to get Florida State to sign. What considerations did Swofford give Florida State at the last moment to get Florida State to sign? Remember, they were the last university to sign. Is that part of the challenge? If Florida State pulls the trigger, is that part of the story? Could that be? Mark, another great point in your Cloak and Dagger. And then ESPN blows up the Big East when they reject the contract. Absolutely great, fantastic comment. Thanks, Mark, for your generosity. I appreciate you, good sir. Thank you so very much. And I'll just let people know, Mark was one of the people, one of the few who knew what was going on with USC and the Big Ten. Mark was what, so Mark can say it in the chat room if he wants to. He can say, look, we had the story. Big Ten was being tracked And of course, this was all verified by Los Angeles Times and such. Stephen Barkus, tinfoil hat time. Greg is the smiley face guy. No, I'm not even sure it's a guy. I've been told it's a woman. Don't care. Don't want to know. Yeah, Klaus Schwab. It's so embarrassing he deleted his account after pretending to have inside info. Yeah.
Call from
Ryan Matson, Sky Yuma.
Ryan Matson, Sky Yuma. Mr. Gophers in the house. What do you got to say, sir?
Hey, thank you for having me on, Greg.
Yep.
You got a great show, and I really appreciate everything you put out there.
Thank you, sir.
But I wanted to go in a direction of like the Pac-12. You know, like we always hear articles about potential teams that will be in the Big Ten or possibly in the Big Ten, like Stanford, Cal, Washington, Oregon.
Yeah.
What if they go in a different direction? What if they, instead of look at those teams, they try to bridge the gap between like the LA schools in Nebraska, and they just try to do maybe one of the schools, like a Utah or Colorado? Do you think that would be a possibility if they, you know, in the future try to get Notre Dame?
Okay.
What's your take on that?
Sure. So you're thinking, well, what about look at the possibility of Big Ten going with a 17th school, right?
Yeah.
And just wait until Notre Dame makes that decision to be the 18th school. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I've been hearing a little talk about that, but I wasn't sure how realistic any of that is. I was just kind of curious your take on it.
That's a possibility. I think it's something that people are speculating on, and I can completely understand it. I think if it's a 17th school, it's not going to be Utah or Colorado, though. It's going to be an Oregon or a Washington.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Oregon and Washington. Nothing against Utah. Utah, in fact, the money perch, the people that we talk to, that narrow path, right, that narrow window that we talk to, money perch people, have always said there's no steam behind the California. There's other big-time, national, great college football reporters that say no, Stanford and California would be the 19th and 20th if they did that whole thing right now. We would be wrong then here at Peek Around the Corner because we've had no steam on California. We would have Utah as that 20th school. But that's us. But Oregon and Washington are definitely 17 and 18. There's definite interest. There is definite interest. There has been since there has been. And, I mean, the great Brett McMurphy, Action Network, he was the one that reported it, that Oregon and Washington both had preliminary meetings with the Big Ten. One in Chicago, the other in Washington had it in New York City with the Big Ten. Big Ten doesn't go around having preliminary meetings with just anybody. And it wasn't just Kevin Warren. It wasn't just Kevin Warren who wanted to pursue this. And we said it at the time. And there's been other reporters who have said it in their articles, national reporters. So there is, look, oftentimes it's not black and white. It's full of gray, right? There are different competing differences. People in the Big Ten that have different interests that want to push certain things at certain times, and they're competing against each other. We don't know. The votes are not there for expansion. There's a lot of different hurdles, the money, the new media company. But to say that there's no interest, no possibility, it's all shut down, that's not accurate. The door is cracked open right now. Take that however you want to take it.
Yep. And I agree with like what you're saying is I can't picture them being on an island by themselves. I know somebody is going to be eventually joining the Big Ten. It's just a matter of who and when. And only time will tell what that's going to be. It's really exciting time for college sports. We just don't know what's going to happen, and we just got to wait and see.
Yeah, it's a crazy time in college sports, and the Gophers are going to win the men's hockey national championship because they have to. It has to be now.
Yeah, I'm excited. They did a great job this this last weekend. So
yeah, they did.
We'll keep it going.
They're the best team in the nation. So win it. Win it.
Yes. Sky
Win it,
Yuma.
maroon and gold. Win it. So I'm going to be crying on the show for a week, I tell you. All right. Thanks.
Oh, I hear you. I'll be in the same boat. And
Yeah.
Before I go, I just want to say, when you do the coverage of the Gophers football games, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I highly recommend you guys checking that out whenever you get a chance. It's great.
Yeah.
So keep it up. I appreciate everything. You have a good rest of your day, Greg.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Great phone call, Mr. Gopher Matson. I appreciate it.
Call from
Crab cakes and football.
Crab cakes and football. Mr. Maryland Terrapin is in the house. Look out. The floor
Yes,
is
sir.
yours, sir.
Hey, I've only been able to hear half of your show, so if you've covered any of this, I apologize ahead of time.
No problem.
But I think with everything going quiet, I think it's already a done deal behind the scenes between Oregon and Washington. I think they're just waiting for the June 31st deadline to come across. I mean, they still got to get a commissioner in. They still got the Final Four going on, so they're not going to announce anything right now anyway.
Yeah.
And, I mean, maybe there's some different presidents that want California and Stanford or whatever, and maybe he needs somebody to come in and actually, try to get the votes one way or the other. But I think it's a done deal. I mean, because if there wasn't a done deal, I think Oregon and Washington would have either accepted the Big 12 by now, or if whatever they got for the Pac-12, which I don't think is a good deal. But they would have done something by now if they didn't have that feeling that they were going to come over to the Big Ten. So I think it's just a done deal waiting to happen. I just think they're waiting for the commissioner to be put in after, the Final Four and the championship games and everything's complete. And then, they got football practices going on right now. And at some point, I think it'll be addressed. I think it's just they have to be quiet. They just don't want to trump other sports because they try not to trump other sports.
Yeah. I don't think it's a done deal by any stretch, but I understand what you're saying. You have to, there's so many things that have to go right for this to happen before the 2000 football season. First of all, we're going to get a strong indication, or I shouldn't say there's a chance. I think there's a strong chance. We're going to get a strong indication of where the wind is blowing in regards to adding Oregon and Washington when we hear who the next Big Ten commissioner is, right? That's going to give us a strong clue. We also, some media companies going to have to pay the freight. Even if Washington and Oregon come in at a discount rate, let's say $40 million each school in their media money for the next 6 years, someone's going to have to pay that. It's not going to be $80 million. Someone's going to have to go over the top because those are 2 extra slices. So some media company's going to have to say, we're willing to pay $120, $140 million a year to add 2 more schools, and we get the 4th pick many of the weeks during the season for those 6 years. That's a high hurdle to overcome. So a lot of different hurdles. All we can say at Peek Around the Corner is there is interest in Oregon and Washington, and there is the reality that is settling in on the travel issues. So,
because for USC and UCLA, Maryland played UCLA this year. UCLA's made a couple of trips in basketball already to the East Coast.
yeah,
So if the travel was really that big of a deal to them, then they probably would never have scheduled games like that now.
yeah,
And they go to the Bahamas. They go to all these other kick-starting for basketball and everything. So they're already used to travel. So I think some of that's just politicking. But
yeah.
football, they don't get all that. So,
Sure, but
football is a different story.
Yeah. There is, okay. So I see some other comments in the comments section. If you added an Oregon and a Washington, teams out east could take care of their softball, baseball, whatever Olympic sport, non-revenue sport, they could take care of the West Coast teams, West Coast away games all in one trip, right? They could stay there one weekend and then the next weekend be gone for a week and then come back and you're done playing the Oregon, Washington, USC, Stanford. You could play your softball games against Washington, Oregon one weekend, the next weekend, or that midweek, especially midweek in softball and baseball. Get all those games over, then come back. It actually, I've seen people, I've talked to people. The Oregon, if you add 2 more West Coast teams, it will reduce the travel. It will reduce the travel, but forget about the reality of it. Throw away the napkins and marking it all down on the napkin or putting out a spreadsheet. It's the battle of perception, right? The Big Ten is starting to get knocked for this, and it's going to continue, and it's going to get heavy even before 2024 begins. Matt Hayes, let me put this up. One more time because people haven't seen the whole show. Multiple Big Ten officials expressed concern about travel logistics with USC and UCLA, and earlier this month told Saturday Tradition that athletic scheduling, travel, and academic stress for all student athletes at all member institutions, not just football players, must be addressed, and that USC and UCLA can't be left on a geographic island. And I got to tell you,
that's why they need Silverman.
Huh?
That's why they need Silverman as commissioner.
Well, if Mark Silverman becomes commissioner of the Big Ten, there will be more expansion, and it will happen quickly. I don't know if he's going to become the Big Ten commissioner. If it happens quickly. If Mark Silverman is announced, well, first of all, we're going to do a live show no matter if you're announced. Crab football. If you're announced Big Ten commissioner, we're doing a live show. But if Silverman is announced the next Big Ten commissioner, holy smokes. Buckle up.
So, yeah. But that's all I really had for you. Is that I think, I mean, there's a lot that's they got to get a commissioner first. And
Yes,
whoever
sir.
they get as their commissioner. But, I mean, and as for the negative recruiting, okay, South Dakota State's having a nice year in basketball, but they're still South Dakota State.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to replace USC and UCLA.
Got it.
So, at the end of the day, that negative recruiting is for a recruit, maybe 2. It's not going to have a lot of big of an effect on anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so that's where I stand on that one. And then hopefully, I mean, I don't know who becomes the commissioner, but if it's Silverman, then yeah, everything will fall into place very easily.
Yeah.
So if it's an ACC guy, then, well, it might be a different story.
Yeah. I agree. Thanks for the phone call, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it. T5 Terps, another Terrapin in the house. Who is this Mark Silverman? Mark Silverman was the one who built the Big Ten Network. He was Jim Delaney's right-hand man when the Big Ten Network was first created. He was the president of the Big Ten Network. He went through so many years of people giving shots at the Big Ten Network. Big Ten Network, the schools were not able to get any money for the first 4 or 5 years of the Big Ten Network payouts because they had to go back to Fox Sports to pay off Fox Sports because they were the sugar daddy who helped build the Big Ten Network. Then Mark Silverman became the president of Fox Sports. Mark Silverman, if you go Google his name, figure out there's articles about him, what would cause further Big Ten expansion years ago. I think Mark Silverman is a wild card. I don't know if he's going to become the Big Ten commissioner. We have absolutely no steam either way on who it possibly could be. I'm just saying, if he does become the Big Ten commissioner, look out, buckle up. He knows the Big Ten inside and out. Even though he's a media guy, he knows the Big Ten inside and out. So we'll see what happens. Sean, Flugar money shot adding West Coast schools reduce travel. They do. I'm just not smart enough to put out a spreadsheet that shows you, but people, you have more flexibility, more options in all of your sports. You can be more regionalized when it comes to your Olympic sports, your non-revenue sports. But you could clear out all your West Coast travel in 1 week of trips for those Olympic sports, get them all done. And of course, for UCLA, you would have those 4 teams. Those definitely would be your permanent rival games for football and also in basketball and also in softball. You can play those schools more often. Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota would play each other more often. Indiana, Purdue, Northwestern, Illinois would play each other more often. You can reduce travel. It's so much easier. We've gone through this. It's so much easier with an 18-team Big Ten than a 16-team Big Ten. It would solve a lot of issues. Now, you don't expand if it costs you money, right? If it costs you exposure. So there are a lot of hurdles. Someone's going to have to pay the freight on it, some media company. But when we're talking about the issue of travel, reality issues and perception. A lot of things would be solved if you brought on Oregon and Washington. And by the way, we're not breaking any news here today. That was the plan back in June 30th. The plan, we talked about it in the very first couple of shows that Peek Around the Corner. It was never to have USC and UCLA home on an island. That wasn't supposed to happen. Kevin Warren got way over the tip of his skis, starting to talk about other schools, California. He did not play well with the Big Ten presidents, did not know how to build consensus, said things in public he should not have said over and over and over again. There was a communication issue, just like Kevin Warren had a communication issue during the pandemic in 2020. Same issue, different issue, but the same reason why Kevin Warren just couldn't get anybody behind him. He's leaving. His first day for the Chicago Bears president is April 17th. When should we expect a new Big Ten commissioner? I don't know. Possibly May, early May, hopefully. But I don't know. We shall see. Why do Big Ten teams want to make more trips out west? Well, Tony, I just explained that. I don't know. I mean, again, when you say Big Ten teams, you got to also consider UCLA and USC as Big Ten teams. They're Big Ten teams. And if they can play more of their games, going to Seattle, going to Washington, going to Oregon, and again, you can have hubs around the West Coast. Our Minnesota Golden Gophers baseball team can just go out there one time, go down the Pacific Coast, play those games, come back. Now you're not playing baseball again for the rest of the year. And those schools can play against each other and cut down on travels to the East Coast for those Olympic and non-revenue schools. Yep, April 17th is his first day as Chicago's president.
Call from
Immaculate.
Brian's in the house. Welcome in, sir. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Greg. Good to talk to you. Got a few things to talk to you about if you got the time.
Yeah, I got the time. Let's go.
Well, we'll start with FSU since that's one of your headliners.
Yes.
Folks want to see what's going on with that. My suggestion, of course I don't know, but my suggestion is to start watching for certain talking heads on ESPN to start picking at the ACC.
Yeah.
Can't tell you exactly what they're going to say, but they're going to start taking shots at it, because the big unknown in this is how ESPN is going to try to push this. We can see it, like the big brands in the ACC, they make more ratings when they play their counterparts in the SEC. They don't get good numbers within the ACC. They get better numbers in the SEC. ESPN is under pressure to make basically more money. I mean, it's not that they can't do anything, but they need to do more that makes them better profits. And with higher ratings comes higher advertising numbers. So they're going to want to get some of these schools over into the SEC. Now, what would they be willing to offer the ACC? I don't know, but they're going to be a player in this. I don't know what you think about that. If you think that hog, or if that's where it's at.
No, I guess I am not sold, or the people I've talked to are not sold on the fact that ESPN would help at all, would help Florida State at all. Their media contract with these ACC schools are gold for ESPN. And they do not hold the grant of rights. The ACC conference does. So ESPN wants things to continue the way they are for those schools. I think everyone over there is quite happy with how the ACC network is playing out. They're getting a little bit more revenue than they thought they were going to get out of the network. Something that the Big 12 schools do not get with ESPN Plus, and of course the Pac-12 schools with that disaster at the Pac-12 network. But the ACC has such a low Tier 1 contract. $17 million per school is not good at all. They can't change it. So I don't think, I leave open the possibility that ESPN would be the invisible hand guiding all this, but at this point, I would bet against it. I think this is going to be if someone's going to break out of that grant of rights, it's going to have to go to court.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
We're talking regular season when we're talking these contracts. In that regard, I agree. When it comes to the new postseason and what we talked about, what I think it will be, that's where it's a big difference. The value of those schools in the SEC with an SEC postseason tournament of, say, 5 division champs and 1 wild card, those schools are worth so much more in the SEC that it's worth paying them more because of what you're going to get in the end. You imagine looking at the ACC and saying, how do you work an extended tournament in that? They can't even get people to watch what they put out now with a single championship game. You got no room to expand that tournament or from a championship game to a tournament, whereas with the SEC you do. And if you take programs like Clemson and FSU and maybe some others and you plug them into that, I think you definitely maximize that. And if you could make a division like with North Carolina, Virginia, Clemson, South Carolina, and one other, you can take schools that really aren't doing well and people can look at it and say, where's the value in it? And say, well, you're creating it by putting them in their own division, having them come into this. So I think the future is what a lot of people aren't actually seeing because we're not getting these hints. We're not getting told about these options as possibilities because there's nothing to point to it yet.
Yeah.
But it's entirely possible. And I think that the people at the top see this. This is what they see. They don't talk about this, though.
Yeah. And I would say, look, I agree with you. And at Peek Around the Corner, we've been saying how the Big Ten, they're going to be successful at some point down the road to expand with Southeastern schools, okay? Mm-hmm. At some point, right? They're going to want to do that. The demographic advantages, everything we've talked about. So imagine this. Big Ten, they want to expand they want to add 2 more schools in the Southeast. They want to, let's say they're able to grab a Miami, Florida, and a North Carolina. I'm just throwing those 2 schools out there. I could have said Florida State and North Carolina. Let's say it's Miami, Florida, and North Carolina. Okay? So now you got an 18-team conference, right? North Carolina is 17, Miami, Florida is 18. We're pretending here. Okay. Now, USC and UCLA are still home on an island, right? I mean, they're over 1,000 miles away from Lincoln, Nebraska. Now you've just made the conference. They want to go east, but can they go east without adding some schools on the Pacific Coast? Can they actually do that? Really?
I think the plan along is to be to get more West Coast.
Yeah, if they're going to go, if the Big Ten's going to go to a 20-school conference or 24-school conference, they're going to put their football in divisions as well, right?
Yeah.
Of course they are, because they're going to want semifinals. They're going to want to market that, brand that, have a media company pay huge money for Big Ten semifinals. Who's going to get to the championship game, right? Well, you're not going to have USC, UCLA in a division with Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. So
100%.
Yeah. So USC and UCLA, there's going to be more expansion out of the Pacific Coast. I feel real good about saying that. The question is when, and there's going to be expansion at some point in the East for the Big Ten, and that will conclude this generation of Big Ten expansion. Although realignment never sleeps, you might have fractures in the future. You might have a different economics in the future that would cause for fracturing. We don't know, but realignment never sleeps.
First thing I'll say in response to that is, if the Big Ten wanted a future with no divisions, we'd already be there. They'd already have it announced. We'd already be doing that. We've heard about that coming from the SEC. But they'd already be ready for it. They don't want.
Yeah, we will have it. We will have it.
Yeah.
We will have it. Except what do you do when you go to 20 and 24 schools? Do you still have no divisions? I highly doubt that.
Yeah. It just won't work. Because it doesn't create rivalries as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't create hate and love and all these things that make people want to watch. Yeah. Divisions do that. The networks know it. Everyone knows it.
Yeah, everyone knows it.
The final thing on that, if people want to know where this is going, they kind of need to determine how many schools does the Big Ten want in its Western division of the future? Do they want 4 schools and go with like a 20-team or a 24-team situation? 24 teams would be 6 divisions.
Yeah, 6 schools in a division. Yeah.
That's why I kind of go with the 25-team total, and that's just because that means 5 teams in that Western division. This is where them taking USC and UCLA really kind of showed us their hand. Then we were able to see, okay, this is where this is going because they're already starting to piece together their Western division. If they hadn't gone out there, then we know, okay, maybe they're not looking out west to do this. Maybe they're going to go smaller. But when they took USC and UCLA, they told us, they're basically telling us, we're going big, we're going nationwide, and it's not over out there because 2-team division just doesn't work, obviously.
Yeah.
So,
no, it won't work.
Decide, where do you think? You think 4? Well, then it's probably Oregon and Washington because they're the biggest value adds.
Yeah.
You know, people say, well, they want them. But anyways, that's where that's probably going is look and figure out what size divisions people think. I personally am at 25 with 5 divisions.
Okay. All right.
But that's but yeah, if people want to go, just see when Kevin Warren is leaving. That's when they'll probably already have a commissioner and ready to go. And that's the guy who's going to get all the legal paperwork figured out in his manner. And that's probably when we're going forward.
Yeah, we'll learn a lot when we know who the new commissioner is. Yeah.
But anyways, good talking to you, man. I just kind of wanted to go in there.
Yep. Thank you, sir. Great phone call. Thanks, Brian. check it out. So Big Ten wants Oregon, Washington over Florida State, Miami, North Carolina. I don't know. I don't think it's a question of what schools, do we want Oregon and Washington over Florida State, or we want Florida State over those other schools. There's a lot more to it than that. I mean, if Oregon and Washington are available, which they are, if they come in as a discount for the next 6 years, as they possibly could, that changes the dynamics of that decision.
Call from
Mo and Vision, Mr. Buckeyes in the house. He's still upset with me that I picked it. No, he's happy with me. He's happy with me that I picked Penn State to win the Big Ten championship because I am Greg the Cooler. The floor is yours, Mona Vision.
I'd have been happier if you picked Michigan to win the hockey. That way we could ensure that the Wolverines
Gophers are
do
going to
not get a hockey national championship, but you're probably going to cool it, so
nope.
I guess I'll have to live with that. But
Okay.
I'm calling this is a disagreement call.
Got it.
I'm going to call, and I'm going to say right now, Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten is not done.
Well, it's not done. Definitely not done. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a done deal. I don't even think it's close to a done deal.
Yeah.
I think the preference of the no vote block, would be for Oregon and Washington to sign a short-term grant of rights in the Pac. I know that Oregon has made several promises of things they're quote-unquote going to do. I think those presidents would like to see them actually do them. I don't think they want to base this on a promise that they're going to get their academic research up or get the state of Oregon to somehow let them have a medical school. They want to see that actually put into practice. And I think Oregon's taken that first step. They went and got a president from the Big Ten who understands the importance of research, coming from Wisconsin, one of our largest research institutes. And then I wanted to disagree with Brian. I don't think ESPN has any incentive to get ACC teams out and into the SEC.
Yeah.
Right now, the ESPN is paying pennies on the dollar for ACC content.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if it gets a low rating, even if you're only getting 500,000 or 1 million viewers, when you're paying pennies on the dollar for 3.5 hours of programming, my God, you're going to go tooth and nail to protect that. It's going to be against your interests. And if and you could always step in and say, hey, why don't the ACC and SEC do it almost a preseason, rivalry cross-up where one year you'll have Florida State play Alabama and the next year you'll have Clemson play. That's more in line with it than them thinking that ESPN is going to help get Florida State, Clemson, and UNC into the SEC.
Yeah. Mullen Vision, can I just can I interrupt just for a moment?
By all means.
I absolutely agree with you. I see Matthew Carlson just put out a comment. Regal Knoll, who has a huge thread in War Chant about expansion on 3, Florida State is worth a check. I've had people send me information, giving screenshots. I thank all of you for giving me all that in DMs. But this goes back to what Mona Vision's just saying. Regal Knoll, he makes a lot of comments about how ESPN is in the room and how they're going to help Florida State get out of the ACC and they're going to trade with Fox Sports. And I don't know who Regal Knoll is, and I'm not going to sit here and criticize him. The only nobody I criticize is myself, unless you hide behind a smiley face. But my point is, I find it very, very difficult to believe that ESPN would be doing any of what Regal Knoll is saying that they're doing. So, again, I thank everyone who sent me all that information because I don't want to be caught in my own information silo. But everyone who's ever talked to me said ESPN would not would not do any of what Regal Knoll is saying that they are doing or would do. So, but thank you, Matthew Carlson, for putting that up. Monovision, I absolutely agree with you. Continue on, good sir.
Yeah, I just want to put out there, I think it's important to remember that although we view it as SEC and ESPN are intrinsically linked, outside of like their partnership with the SEC network, they're not committed to the SEC. It's not till death do us part.
Yeah.
At the end of the next media deal, SEC could very well go out there and negotiate a deal with NBC Universal, Turner Broadcasting. So it really wouldn't do ESPN any good to basically load up the value on SEC for their next media deal.
Yeah.
So I don't see that happening. I don't see ESPN is going to be the one party that wants to enforce that gore more than anybody else.
Yeah. Well, they would want to enforce. They would want ACC to enforce the gore because ESPN doesn't hold it, but they do hold. They did buy. They got the distribution rights of the ACC, but they do not hold the grant rights. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And back to the Oregon-Washington thing, I don't see Oregon and Washington joining the Big Ten this go around. The only way I see that being even a possibility now is if the price is too good. And what I mean by that is the new commissioner comes in Oregon and Washington say, we're going to take a 30% share for 7 years.
Yeah. We might be.
I think the same is true. I think the same is actually true of Cal as well.
Yeah.
I don't ever see Stanford joining the Big Ten. Just in reading up on them, I think if the Pac-12 dissolved, they would just go independent. They're more concerned about their Olympic sports. They're not going to want to travel. They'll keep their Olympic sports regional with, the Mountain West or one of the other smaller West Coast schools and compete nationally. But I would not be shocked if you see Cal, Oregon, and Washington all join the Big Ten, but it would be under an extremely reduced deal. It would have to be reduced to like a 30 to 35% share for the duration of the media deal.
Yeah, I agree. I just think maybe the math has changed. So that's something that we have to keep an eye on because, whatever Washington and Oregon whatever their bottom price dollar was to get into the Big Ten, I think they've lowered it. I think they've lowered it in the last couple of months. But you bring up a lot of good points, Monovision, as always.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I think that they would make, the Big Ten would make more money off of that deal. Yes. But I think that might be the grease in the gear right there.
Yeah.
Is that they could give, some of the no votes might be willing to come along and take more games on streaming if they're getting an extra $5 to $10 million a year as a result of Oregon, Washington, and Cal taking
and that's why earlier I made sure to say if Oregon and Washington, just for an example, if Oregon and Washington would come in at $40 million each on a media deal for 6 years, if some media company or combo of media companies come out and say, we'll pay you $120 million for that, right? I didn't say 80, I said 120, right? Because the extra dollars need to go to the other Big Ten schools to help grease the skids so they would make a couple of $1 million more so they make sure that they wouldn't be diluted, their shares wouldn't get smaller. Absolutely correct, Monovision. Someone is going to have to go over the top of what they're willing to pay, for Big Ten payouts to Washington, Oregon. Someone's going to have to go over that number to get them in the boat. I absolutely agree.
And I will finish this off like I occasionally do. No future big expansion without Notre Dame, Greg.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Great call, Mr. Buckeye. Daniel Montecastle, thank you for the super chat. Oh, that's a mustache. I was wondering what that was. I thought maybe that was binoculars. I thought that was binoculars. That's a mustache. I think that's a mustache. Thank you, Danielle, for your generosity to the channel. Thank you so much. And I apologize for whatever happened to this channel and locking you out. I'm not sure what happened. It's happening all over some YouTube channels.
Call from
Ryan Thomas.
Ryan Thomas is in the house. The floor is yours.
How are you, Greg?
I'm doing okay. We did a surprise Wednesday afternoon edition of the live show. Peek around the corner. As you know, you got to keep a head on a swivel in the PATC community. The floor is yours, sir. What do you got to say?
So I've been thinking about this, and Mullen Vision actually just covered a lot of the points I was going to look at. That I was going to cover, but the only disagreement I have with him is I think Stanford would join the Big Ten if perhaps if there were an Oregon, a Washington, a UCLA, and USC. If you had 5 Pacific Coast teams there, essentially, I think that's tenable for Stanford, because a lot of the Olympic sports, like track and field and swimming and other things like that, they do these regional invitationals. They don't go to other, it's a different animal having run cross country and track collegiately. It's a different animal.
Yeah.
But I mean, one thing that I wanted to point out, and I know before I've gone on the research diatribe, but with the Big Ten, there actually is a real existing research consortium that exists. Yep. And when you look at, I think the holdup for Oregon right now is the issue with Oregon is the Big Ten averages about just over 5.5 million viewers a game is their average. Oregon is clear down at about, in fact, Stanford had, Oregon's about 1.96 million viewers, and Washington's about 1.73, and Stanford's actually higher than Washington at 1.83. The interesting thing I'd point out is I actually think that when you add in the value that Stanford and Washington would both bring into that research consortium, I think overall those two picks, I would think that Stanford's probably ahead of Oregon in the pecking order. And I know Duck Nation is going to bring the pitchforks after me on that. But, I mean, when it comes down to it, in economics there's a concept called marginal utility. And for every additional increment of a unit, that unit becomes less valuable. It's sort of like, one chocolate bar tastes good, but having 10 chocolate bars, that 10th chocolate bar doesn't taste so good. Mm-hmm. And the issue is the Big Ten doesn't have a problem with brand values. It doesn't have a problem with viewers. I mean, Oregon's not bringing something to the Big Ten that it does not already have. And I think that's the real holdup. And, I think you're right. It has to be at a great price. But I also think the reality is nothing's going to happen this time around. But also the reality is if you go over to the ACC, if I'm the Big Ten, I am drooling over UVA, UNC, Georgia Tech, and FSU. I mean, I am drooling over those schools because of the markets that they get you into. FSU is likely going to be AAU by that point. They've made a huge commitment to their research spending. I mean, I think that to me is what I think the Big Ten is waiting for. And as I pointed out in the call before, with each passing year, that exit fee and the get out of that grant of rights in the ACC becomes less and less. And 7 years from now, when we come up on the Big Ten's next TV deal, and like I said, given that when you look at the exponential growth, each time the Big Ten's TV value seems to increase 150%. I mean, if you're talking 2031 or 2030 when the next negotiations pull up and the Big Ten's at, $200+ million a school alone in TV media value, you know, and you're talking only about 4 or 5 years left in that ACC deal, then it becomes a lot more tenable for those schools to get out. And I think that that's probably, I mean, if I'm the Big Ten, I pump the brakes hard right now on Oregon and Washington, because I think it makes sense not to take them, because I think the bigger prizes are coming down the road. And honestly, when you look at what they bring as far as those huge eastern markets, those huge areas, I think it's just a lot more value. I mean, and Oregon's fan base, yeah, they've got a good fan base, but it's spread out, and it's really not driving the value of the Big Ten network. Washington would probably drive that more, and I think, you know, I mean, the Big Ten network really makes its money in areas where you've got a concentrated fan base that will demand it. And I think that's a key area. I mean, it would, in Washington and Seattle, for example, is where it would be very successful.
You
Portland,
think Oregon Duck fans would pay for the Big Ten network?
Well, it depends on where they're looking. It depends on where they live, Greg, and where the demand is, and how much pull they have on the local cable carriers to pick it up. I would think probably, you know, in the state of Washington and the alumni, I think it would be there. I mean, but Portland is kind of an average size market, you know, and it depends on really where those fans are located and how they're spread out. I mean, if it's already in Southern California, it's got a lot of Duck alumni living in the Southern California area. Well, the Big Ten network's already going to be carried in there, regardless of whether the Ducks are there or not. And same with Washington. I just think right now, like you said, Washington is definitely the most digestible of it, but I'm not quite sold on Oregon yet, and I think the Big Ten is wisely waiting for what's going to happen 6 or 7 years down the road, because those 4 ACC schools are going to be just tremendous, you know, value adders. And when you talk about the trend is I think your mark's right on. Basketball rights are going to be bid on separately. And when you talk about UVA, UNC basketball coming into the fold, that's going to be pretty tantalizing too to the Big Ten as well. So I mean, I think at this point, I don't see the island for USC and UCLA getting bigger until 6 or 7 years from now.
Okay.
You know, I think that's it. But that's my call today. Thanks everyone, and thanks for doing the show, Greg, and have a great day.
Great call. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Great call. I appreciate it. Again, I happen to believe that Oregon has a much bigger brand, much bigger viewership than I think most people in the chat seem to consider. But and I really honestly, how do I say this? If the Big Ten, for whatever reason, just quickly turns around with the new commissioner and goes to Fox Sports and says, we want Washington and Oregon, we want them to become Big Ten members, Fox Sports would say yes, lickety-split. I think an Oregon into the Big Ten would change their numbers dramatically, their viewership numbers. They would go even higher. So I understand the research part. I mean, University of Washington is 13 times, 12 times bigger research university than Oregon. That stuff doesn't go unnoticed in the Big Ten. So I agree with all of that as well. But again, talking about Big Ten, going for some of those ACC schools, those huge markets, absolutely. But again, are they going to go and attach more Eastern schools to the Big Ten when having USC and UCLA home on an island? Don't see that happening. Bonehead. Brett Yormark, next Big Ten commissioner. Yeah, I don't think so. Richard, Oregon is one of the 6 non-Big Ten SEC with above media evaluation. I think some of it is. I think some of it is where I live in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota. These are our neighbors. Oregon is a huge brand out there. I know there's not that many people. I know there's not many people up in northern Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and all that. But Oregon is a huge, huge brand. And I think Fox knows that. Big Ten knows that. That's why they're in the game. That's why they have preliminary meetings with Big Ten. That's why they are a candidate. They are a big brand. That big brand is not going away anytime soon. So we shall see. We shall see. Ryan Thomas, once again, talks about their average viewership. Whatever that number is in the Big Ten, that thing would go. What is Oregon's numbers relative to the other Pac-12 schools? We shall see. We shall see. I would much rather watch a random Oregon football game than a Virginia game, and so would everyone else on earth. I think Ryan Thomas was, Virginia's a huge market. Big Ten, go in there. Don't know how many Cavalier fans would pay for Big Ten Network. I think Oregon would, but again, University of Virginia, big research university, not as big as Virginia Tech, even though Virginia's AAU. But yeah, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida State, those are the big whales. I absolutely agree with Ryan Thomas. I just don't think Big Ten expands to 20 to a 24-team conference without going to the Pacific Coast again. And Matt Hayes got multiple Big Ten officials telling him basically the same thing. We shall see. All right, for those new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, you get notified of our upcoming live shows and episodes and live watch parties. You'll get notified on that. Follow us at Flug Empire on Twitter because we do put out some notification. Not much, but a few minutes before our live show, we'll give you a heads up somehow, some way on Twitter. But subscribe to our channel, smash that like button. If you like our content, it helps with the algorithms at YouTube so very much. Share the video with your family and friends. Disagree, agree with us, put down your comments. I read them all. I try to read them all after the show is over. Then a couple days afterwards, I go read them all. I learned so much from my PATC community. Awesome people. Very diversified because we are okay with disagreeing with each other. We are okay with that. This is college football. We have to do that. Bonehead keeps campaigning for Yormark to be the next Big Ten commissioner. That's going to be a fascinating story. There's so many fascinating stories going on in college football right now. In the last couple of days, we have covered. But this morning, we did the Athlon, breaking down the returning starters of the Big Ten schools. We did Matt Hayes' article, Florida State article, Tomahawk Nation. During this live show, we did a way too early Heisman watch, top 6 picks. So there's a lot of stuff going on. We're going to be covering stuff every single day, almost every single day, leading up to the spring football games. We're going to be doing live watch parties of some spring football games. Watch the quarterback battles between Ewers and Manning. Oh my goodness. Texas Longhorns. I think Arch Manning's going to take over that quarterback top spot. I think he's going to lead the Longhorns to a Big 12 championship in his true freshman season. Am I crazy? Am I crazy like a fox? Let me know It's going to be fun. It's going to be a great season, 2020. We're almost in April. We're getting there, guys and gals. We are getting there. Ooh, Virginia's a tad higher than Virginia Tech in research. Okay, I didn't know that. I thought Virginia Tech's expenditures in research was a little bit higher than Virginia. I'm probably wrong. Thanks for that, D5 Terps. Redeemed, thanks for coming into the chat. Colorado has been everyone's favorite team to play lately. Easy win for the other team. Now, one Pac-12 coach says Colorado's a problem. If they start winning, they will really be a problem. Yeah, if Deion Sanders gets Colorado Buffaloes into a bowl game this year, that momentum is just going to go and go and go. He's going to be able to recruit even better. The boosters on the sidelines going to give more and more money. The NIL collectives are going to get bigger and larger and more effective. Redeem is absolutely right. If they win next year, if they go 7-5, holy smokes, 6-6, get to a bowl game, Deion Sanders has something going on. I don't know about his quarterback though. Is he that good? I've seen tapes on him, his son. I don't know. I have questions about it. I have questions about the son as quarterback. We shall see. Again, their spring football game, Colorado spring football game, is on ESPN. I think it's on April 22nd. If I can do a live show on that, I will. I know on April 22nd, 11 o'clock Central Time, I'm doing a live watch party show on the Gophers spring game. So maybe I'll do a doubleheader on April 22nd. We shall see. But right now, we're going to close this afternoon live show up. We've been on the air for 2 hours. So thank you all for joining us here at Peek Around the Corner. Before you leave, please subscribe to our channel, smash that like button, and share the video with your family and friends. Thank you so much for the wonderful phone calls and the comments here at Peek Around the Corner. It's been fun. Once again, keep your head on a swivel. Cloak and Dagger, Cloak and Dagger. There is so much going on behind the scenes. It's crazy out there. So stick with us here. We're covering all these stories, all of them, every single one of them, and we're getting into football, spring football. So stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. Until next time. From all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take good care of each other. Thank you so very much.